Hi guys, this is SA and I'm with co-host Wren Nightingale and we are with the author Sesh Corner. This session we are doing the read aloud where we read chapters from our books, about 2 chapters. And I would like to just recap kind of what we've read already because we've already read chapters 1 through 4 of Fool's Haven. So pretty much what has happened up until this point is that Gracie got her heart broken. She meets Lance, who is a felis, which is a creature. Think those who play Monster Hunter, the Palicos, think something like that, because that's what I used for my inspiration. And then Lance ends up having to leave. So she is a part of this orphanage that is called the Misfits. And she tries to go back, ends up chickening out, runs into the orphanage son, almost hitting him with the door. And then he ends up chasing her, who ends up being my main male character. And then from there on, they go on a job that is for magically inclined magicians, humans, whatever you want to call them. And they are at the resort. And they had just spent the night, I believe, their first night there. Okay, so they had already done one of the tasks and stuff. So they went on the lake trying to see if anyone looked suspicious, pretty much at the resort. It's kind of a silly little idea, but it's a resort for lovers, couples, marriage, all that, and a series of affairs keep happening when people go there, and so they're trying to figure out what's going on. So this is chapter 5. And it's called To Burn Within. And this is a long chapter, so bear with me. Okay. I think this is it. Gracie pointed to a room coming up to the right. After comparing the number posted on the door to the number in the brochure, she nodded, confirming. She reached for the handle, but Sebastian's hand beat her. Ladies first, he said quietly. Still have to play the part. Gracie agreed and smiled at him as he opened the door. More people were attending the sketch class than they were in the boating class, each person focused on the instructor. The room was warm and small in size as the easels were set up in 4 centers of 4. Gracie thought the people attending were smart to choose sketching instead of enduring the cold outside. Well, hello there, newcomers. Please choose an empty pair of easels. We were just about to get started, the woman said seductively, her hand extending palm up. Gracie noticed the instructor's lips moving, but no words came out, which sent chills down her spine as a sharp pain sliced through her head. She raised her hand to her temple, applying pressure as she rubbed in a circular motion. Her vision started to blur as Sebastian turned to stand in front of her and leaned toward her worried. Come on, Sebastian said in a low tone. He reached for her hand and guided her. If we need to leave, we can. Gracie shook her head as the pain started to dull. She had felt fine before stepping into that room. I'm all right, she replied, sitting on the stool that Sebastian led her to. The woman didn't put off any magic that Gracie was familiar with, but something sinister surged from her. Hello, everyone. My name is Celine, and I'm the instructor for this class, Celine introduced. Gracie avoided looking at Celine, her eyes glued to the blank paper flipped to the easel. With his arms crossed, Sebastian observed the woman without making himself obvious. She had long, flowing raven black hair and wore a dress with a low V-neck. The skirt ended at her ankles with slits up both sides, teasing glimpses of her thighs. If there was a word to describe what Sebastian thought of the instructor, it would be lustful. Today we will be sketching your significant other. Gracie quietly squealed and remained with gaped lips. You seem excited, Bauman. Might want to shut that trap before it starts catching flies, he smirked. Her mouth shut instantly. That was rude, she pouted, but it was short-lived as she fiddled with the variety of pencils on the trays connected to the easels. Once she found the one she would start with, Gracie twirled it in her fingers and thought before she began. She glanced at Sebastian often as she began to outline to get the basics down before she started with more essential details. After some time passed, Gracie sat her pencil down, grabbed the smudger pencil, and began shading. She got so lost in the moment that she forgot where she even was. When Gracie sketched, she would zone out and focus solely on the drawing. Something about drawing kept her emotions at bay, much like focusing on meditation. An intrusive feeling made her aware that she wasn't alone anymore. A small audience surrounded her, and she froze up, not liking all the attention as she normally sketched in privacy, self-conscious about her drawing ability. I see we have someone with artistic ability in here, Celine's voice announced, echoing through Gracie's head as if she had just screamed in her ear. Her temples start to throb. It's nothing really, Gracie responded, trying to sound like she wasn't suffering. That's some talent. Celine placed a hand on Gracie's shoulder. The pain started to feel as if she was on fire. Tears brimmed in her eyes as she glanced over at Sebastian. Sebastian nodded, getting the hint, and stood. Ready, dear? He held out his hand to her. Sorry, but we have other plans lined up and we lost track of time. Gracie forced a smile while she accepted Sebastian's hand. She could feel how sweaty her hand was in Sebastian's. Can I take this? Gracie asked and reached for her sketch. She would have hated to leave it, and she knew Sebastian wouldn't have liked someone else to have a drawing of him, even if it was incomplete. Well, of course, Celine answered. She smiled and showed pearly white teeth through her dark lipstick. It is, after all, a sketch of your husband. Gracie let go of his hand, quickly released the paper from the easel clip, and headed toward the door. She felt Sebastian's hand on the small of her back as her eyes started to blur once more, and she felt as if she would fall as the pain intensified. The longer she was near the woman, the worse it got. As Sebastian and Gracie stepped out the door and closed it behind them, Gracie was instantly released from the pain. However, she started experiencing a whirlwind of coughing fits. She staggered to the wall, clawing at it as she gagged and gasped. Fire. The pain felt like she was set on fire, and then suddenly the feeling dissipated. Hands shaking, she sketched herself to ensure she wasn't burnt. Gracie, Sebastian said, reaching for her. Her eyes widened with a scared look. Her breath remained rigid as she swatted at him. She felt the familiar tug on her core. Leon, no, Gracie said out loud rather than through their connection. Sebastian crouched before Gracie, his back turned to her, kneeling. Here, get on, he said, motioning to his back. Gracie shook her head. It's okay, Sebastian. I can walk. Her breathing became more labored as she focused on calming herself down. I said, get on. Don't argue with me. After a moment of trying to argue with him anyway, she sighed, defeated, and tiredly climbed onto his back. Sebastian took them back to their room, casting a small magic seal Monroe had shown him over the door so no one could sense them or break in. Leon appeared as Gracie dropped into one of the sofa chairs. What the hell was that? Leon asked, pissed off. That energy fucking burned me, Gracie. Leon shoved up his sleeve to his button-up, showing the blistering on his arm. What? She screeched and jumped back up with the last of her energy. What do you mean? Her hand shook while she stared at Leon's arm as a dizzy spell washed over her. That woman, Sebastian started, his eyes stared at Leon's arm, was not fully human. She has some power, but it's definitely not magical energy. You're telling me. Gracie anxiously ran a hand through her hair. My head was going to explode like a damn bomb. The throb sounded like ticks. Her hand stopped at the necklace, grasping it in her hand. I wonder if I was the only one affected by her. Leon stared at her neck. Who gave you that necklace? He asked, catching Sebastian's attention. And then the necklace. Sorry, I gotta mark this page. There's a couple things I gotta fix. Okay. Lance, he's a Felis. He was the one who helped me get back on my feet when I felt like falling into oblivion, Gracie answered. Why? Leon pursed his lips before answering. He was smart to give you that. It was not quite what either Gracie or Sebastian expected, but relief showed on her face. It has the qualities of a protection necklace. However, it only protects against magic. Whatever did this to me is not of the magical breed. Gracie sat down. Gracie, you knew there were other types of powers outside magicians, right? Leon studied her. You really have no idea, do you? How did you not know? How did you not when you traveled for a year? I've encountered a creature that referred to itself as a shapeshifter, Sebastian said. Most are known to be devious. However, the one I had met had a rogue mind and only tried to do good deeds. He was friendly and assisted me in a job, and I gave him a cut. I suspected other abilities were out there, but I never believed my father until I encountered one myself. That information surprised Gracie, for when she traveled by herself for the year, or so she did, she never recalled encountering someone who didn't have magical powers. So what do we do? Gracie asked. I think we need to catch up with Brody and Kinsley, see if they found anything. Stay on guard. Leon started pacing. I wish I could tell you more, but for the simple fact she was able to burn me and just me through our link, you're vulnerable to whatever she is. How do I prevent that? Gracie asked, surprisingly calm. Can I maybe encrust my link to Holly? Leon shook his head. No. The one word answer didn't sit well with Gracie. Well, what do you suppose I do? I can't play the freaking victim. I don't want to be helpless, she said, frustrated. Her eyes started to water. You're not the victim, Leon sighed. It would help to know what the hell she was. Gracie, Sebastian called her name to grab her attention. When we entered that room, tell me step by step leading up to when I had to lead you to the easel. I looked in her eyes as she greeted us. Her lips moved for a split second, but no sound came out, which I thought was odd. Then the headache started. The second time, I felt like I was on fire and that my head was going to explode, which would explain why Leon got burned, since the sensation felt like fire. Sebastian leaned against the wall. Well, I have a theory, but it's only what I've heard from folks on my jobs. And? Gracie asked. Leon looked at Sebastian, waiting to hear what he had to say. I think she's a witch, Sebastian said, the word burning off his tongue like acid. Fuck, left Leon's mouth. Do not repeat it. Panic was written all over his face. Leon left to return to his planet. Gracie called Brody, choosing her words wisely, and told them they needed to regroup in her and Sebastian's room to discuss their findings. What they thought was an easy job had turned out to be more than what the reward was worth. Sebastian was crouched beside the fireplace, poking at the logs periodically as Brody paced. Kinsley and Gracie were on the couch, Gracie's head in Kinsley's lap as Kinsley petted Gracie's hair. So, if Gracie is a potential victim, what does that say for me? Is that how they get to the men, by attacking the women? Kinsley asked boredly. I come from a ninja background, which I'm still learning the ways. I can do fire ninjutsu. That's an advantage, if I remember right, Sebastian said. Back in the olden days, they tied them to teepees and lit them on fire to rid this world of their kind. I always thought it was folklore. Then why is Gracie a weakness? Kinsley asked, looking down at the woman lightly snoring. Sebastian rolled his lips, not really knowing himself. Could be her magic core. She's technically a different breed of magic herself. Tanner walked in from the balcony. His expression was wary of their current situation. There's a spell surrounding the resort. How did we not sense that? Has it been there the entire time? Brody asked in an agitated tone. They had entered a trap, and none of them sensed it. Tanner shook his head. I do not believe so. I would have caught it. That's not true. Remember, as soon as we started up the main part of the resort, Gracie kept saying something felt off. Maybe it started then, and once she got closer to the person behind it, it affected her more, Kinsley said. I feel now I'm not taking her seriously. None of us did, Sebastian said. I blew it off because it was a lover's resort. Hey, Tanner started. His eyes wandered to Gracie's neck where he spotted her necklace. Where did she acquire that necklace? Kinsley looked down. I'm not sure. Sebastian? She said a fearless name. Lance gave it to her, he answered as he took the poker to a log. Leon ordered her to keep it on. I agree, Tanner stood before the women, crouching down to get a better look. He continued, My kind creates these. These stones belong to the fearless species. For a fearless to give it to her is unusual unless he wanted to create a bond to stay connected, but there's no way he didn't know that. Why is that unusual? Kinsley asked. Gracie is a bonder after all. It makes sense if it's a bonding background. She makes a good point, Sebastian agreed with Kinsley. Are all feelists capable of bonding? Tanner shook his head. No, it's unheard of for a feelist to give the protection bonding stones to someone outside the race, but I see your point on Gracie. It's one explanation. Is this Lance the feelist walking around Ethlyn? If he has a patch, then yes, Sebastian answered. He was reporting on a job. He said he wouldn't be here long after talking to him. I see. The group sat in silence for a while. The cloud-covered sunset low on the horizon and dusk rolled in. Kinsley and Tanner left for the kitchen to see about some food, leaving Brody, Sebastian, and Gracie. When they returned, the kitchen had prepared an assortment of pasta dinners with bread and butter for the couples at the resort. The tomatoey and garlic aroma overtook the smoky smell from the fireplace. Gracie had woken not long before. She still felt tired, but much better than before the nap. Tanner explained the meaning of the necklace and the creation of a bond. Gracie must always be either with Kinsley or Sebastian. Gracie, do you have any bonds that can produce fire if separated? Tanner asked, with his paws folded on the table. Gracie took a nibble of her bread, shaking her head. No, I do not. The best I have is Holly. She's intellectual and has strategical tactics. She won't work, my lady. Leon bowed. I actually came to implore you that we have to block our links until you get rid of the pest problem to protect our safety, he said, giving her an apologetic look. Gracie cleared her throat. Do you speak for yourself or all of my bonds? Her eyebrows raised in alarm. Leon's fingers strummed his thigh. All. We may not all be from the same place, but as long as our stars are replaced on that Starlink wristlet, we can communicate just like you and I. She set her food down and stood up to go out to the balcony, and the door closed behind her. She tried to be strong, but she felt useless. What good did it do to bring her to the damn job anyways? To make her feel better? To make her feel more herself? She snorted, then chuckled. Yeah, right. That Gracie is gone, she said quietly, sad. She heard the door open and close behind her as a coat thrown over her shoulders. I'm sorry, Sebastian said. If you want to abandon the job due to the circumstances, I wouldn't blame you. She turned toward him with a hurt look. No, that's a shame. That's shameful as a mage. I will always try even if I'm at a disadvantage because I'll either win or lose. I believe things happen for a reason. Life is nothing but choices every day. My choice is to carry out my job and my promise as a mage, regardless of my status. Not that I had a say in this to begin with, but I would be a joke if I took the easy way out. Gracie was quite impressed with her speech, not even stumbling on a word, but even with that she couldn't make herself smile. It was probably not the speech he had expected from her, much less a speech in general. If they wanted Gracie to move on, then she would move on as a different Gracie. She wasn't weak and refused to run away like she had in her past. You know it's a huge risk for everyone, right? Not just yourself, Sebastian said as the breeze blew Gracie's hair. She knew he wasn't trying to be mean, but it was like a slap to the face. It's a risk I'm willing to take to win it. I know Brody and Kinsley will understand. It's like a promise. Promises cannot be broken. If I were to break a promise, I could lose both my spellcasting and bonds. You spellcast? Sebastian turned to face her. Gracie, shit. Sebastian raked a hand roughly through his hair. Did I say something wrong? She asked, feeling like she was in trouble. Then she realized what she had said, exposing her second core. Oh, maybe that's the problem. What kind of spellcaster are you? Spellcasting was fickle, considering that many different breeds of people could acquire the skill no matter the heritage. Gracie shrugged. Mainly divine, when I'm not using bonds. Honestly, I've never taken advantage of that part of my core. I tend to forget that I even harness it. Well, maybe you fucking should. Sebastian's response came out snarky. What is your problem, Sebastian? I did absolutely nothing wrong for you to be a dick. Do you know any canceling spells, he asked, ignoring that she called him a dick. Leon came up to join them. My lady, Sebastian, sorry to intrude, but I think I see where you're going with this, Sebastian. Leon tapped his lips, and there is an advantage. Or that's an advantage. Gracie glanced between both. Clue me in. You can cancel a spell with a spell, Leon began. I'll have to ask, but I'm sure we have a few canceling defensive spells we can present you with. Gracie scoffed. Sounds like you're just taking a gamble for the mere fact that the situation may not even present itself. As you stated, life is nothing but choices. Choices in life are just like a gamble. It just depends on your perspective. You said you'll risk everyone just because you must follow through on a promise to complete this job. Well, your friend here found a solution, one that is solid and could potentially be flawless. I agree that it could work. Are you willing to test the other half of your core? Silence filled the air, eyes on Gracie. Leon grabbed Gracie by the shoulders, giving her a gentle shake. Look, my lady, I get you're dealing with things I can't imagine, but you can't sit here in self-pity. You need to pick yes or no. No one will hate you or blame you for saying no due to the unknown part of you. But if you say yes, I'm on it. We will keep our links open as long as we can to train you. He kept his eyes glued to hers. Gracie, yes or no? Leon calling her name snapped Gracie's tension back to reality. Yes, let's do it. She gave Leon a nervous smile and then looked at Sebastian. I owe you an apology. Sebastian forgave her and apologized as well, for he wasn't the nicest either. Gracie acknowledged it silently as she turned her attention back toward the view. They stood there as unspoken words laid heavily between them, the ambience of the lake's water lapping in waves. Sebastian eventually returned inside. The quiet click of the door resonated as it left for her to stew in the events. She sighed deeply as she leaned her forward down to rest on the railing. She didn't bask long in the silence as the door opened once more and shut. Good, now that we're alone, Kinsley said as she stopped beside Gracie and crossed her arms. We need to talk. Is that necessary? Gracie asked into the railing. You need to talk about Theo eventually. What exactly happened? She asked. Gracie raised her head and glanced at Kinsley. You're really going to make me do this now? She straightened and pulled Sebastian's coat tighter around her. I waited over a month of being ignored. I think now is as good as any time. You're not running away from this, Bauman. I. Gracie stumbled over the words. I told him I was in love with him and asked if he wanted to be serious. She released a strangled laugh as she looked back to the moonlit mountainside. I should have seen the signs. What signs? The signs that we were on completely different levels. He didn't care about me the same way I cared about him, Gracie answered. I was blind. I don't want to say it. Then don't, Gracie snapped. Do you think that maybe that's why I avoided you? She looked at Kinsley, tears in her eyes. You were right. You warned me about him, and I didn't listen. He was, and will always be, a selfish ass. Not to mention how many times you got hurt because of him, Kinsley said, reaching out to touch Gracie's shoulder. Did you ever think maybe that's why Benji stuck by your side? He still went, didn't he? Gracie said angrily. He left me behind too. He did it for you. Theo wasn't gonna go if Benji didn't. Trust me, that was the last thing he wanted to do. I think the only thing keeping Benji sane was the fact Cassie would be with them. Gracie rolled her lips as fresh tears cascaded down her cheeks. Are you still in love with him? Gracie's shoulders shook. I thought I was. If you had to think, then that's not love. What I think happened is he showed you the attention you craved. You latched onto him, and that's what made your world revolve around. Nothing outside that bubble you created mattered until he popped it. Kinsley wrapped her arms around Gracie. I think you need to get this out of your system. I don't care that I was the bad guy and made you talk. He humiliated me, Gracie cried out as Kinsley pulled her into a hug. Everyone heard when he turned me down. He didn't even care. I'm sorry, Kinsley said, rubbing Gracie's back. Gracie shivered and started shaking between crying, creating a wave of exhaustion to wash over her in the cool, crisp chill in the air. I'll be okay. I'm moving on. Kinsley pulled back and wiped at the tears on Gracie's cheeks. I know you don't like burdening people with your problems, but remember, there are those of us who genuinely care about your well-being. Gracie snorted a laugh. That's a long line. That's along the same line Sebastian preached to me when he followed me. Speaking of said man, Kinsley said, grinning. Gracie shook her head and chuckled weakly. Another time, Kinsley, please. Kinsley rolled her eyes dramatically. You win this time. Now, let's talk about happier things to clear your face up. You look like a wreck. No offense. Kinsley laughed and nodded. Scene break, but I really need a drink. Brody and Kinsley returned to their room, exchanging lines with Sebastian so they could communicate faster. Sebastian sat in a chair before the fire and held a whiskey glass in the air. He moved the glass silently to make the liquid swirl. Clutched in his other hand, he held the sketch of him. He couldn't recall her talent for drawing, but then again, he had never paid attention to her at the orphanage. He wished he knew more about witches and hated his lack of knowledge of different types of magic. Sebastian pulled his device out of his pocket, knowing it was late. He sent a message to Remy to see if he could find more about witches and to keep it on the down low. He put the glass to his cheek and closed his eyes. Sebastian had let his guard down around Gracie without even realizing it. They talked as if they hadn't just become acquainted 2 days ago. He felt comfortable around her, but the feeling started to scare him. He took a swig of his drink, clenching his teeth as it burned. His mind raged a war. There was a recent pull from his core of wanting to intertwine with Gracie when she touched him. His element, his magic, had never reacted like that before to anyone. Sebastian, a tired voice called his name. Sebastian glanced toward the bed to see Gracie sitting up, her hair disheveled from all the tossing and turning. He watched as she crawled out to sit on the floor near him. "Can't sleep?" she asked him. He grabbed the bottle from his side, offering her some. "It'll help." He motioned and shook the bottle, "Although I recommend drinking from a glass cup instead of chugging from the bottle. It'll fuck you up and make you want to puke." She leaned over towards Sebastian, taking his glass from his hand, his eyes on his. He raised an eyebrow with amusement. "Do you really think either of us would get up to get me a glass?" She smiled and placed her lips to the rim of the glass cup, slowly tipping it back. The liquid rushed towards her open mouth. Watching her, Sebastian licked his lips. The fire crackled behind them, popping every so often. Gracie lifted the glass toward Sebastian and offered it back. He took the glass cup, watching her draw her knees to her chest. "You haven't asked me one question," she stated. "What do you mean?" She turned to face the fire. "You haven't asked one question to get to know me better." "Am I supposed to?" he asked. "If you don't want to, we don't have to." Silence consumed him, her attention returning to the fireplace where the flames danced. "You draw?" Sebastian asked quietly. Gracie nodded. "I doodle. I wouldn't call myself an artist." Sebastian handed her the drawing. "That's not a damn doodle," he pointed at it. She lifted it back toward him, but he shook his head. "Keep it. It's not finished. It feels incomplete. Give it back to me when it's finished." Gracie nodded, smiling. She set the sketch beside her on the floor. "You have yourself a deal," she said, signaling for his glass. He extended his hand, her fingers grazing his on exchange. Sparks traveled through him and stirred up the electricity within him. He yanked his hand away from the sensation, thankful Gracie had a hold on the glass. "Sorry," he mumbled and rubbed his face, feeling the stubble growing back from his last shave. She shrugged and took a sip. "No need to be sorry. Not even sure why you're apologizing." She took another sip and then handed it back to him. "You get a chance to tell me one thing. Anything. The catch is, though, I want it to be something no one else knows," Sebastian stated. He watched her shift to stand on her knees, grabbing the bottle between his legs rather than the glass. She uncorked the top and took a hard swig that made her gag. Gracie wiped her mouth with the back of her hand as some dribbled from the corner of her mouth. She cleared her throat, plugged the bottle with the cork, and set the bottle beside her. "I used to have a bond that lived as a human to blend in with my family, passed down from a relative. My mother disappeared when I was maybe 8. I assume she's dead. My bond, Amy, continued to raise me rather than my father since I was young. My mom's generation got skipped for the magical core. My grandma Fiona is a bonder but never put her magic to use, which is why I inherited Amy. Anyways, my father became a drunk, going to the brothel, or as I call it, the whorehouse, and blowing through payment as if it grew on trees. He met a gypsy dancer. They were both idiots, and he got her pregnant. Next thing I knew, she was moving in. Then I had a new sister, except I hated her. I hated my father and the woman he married to replace my mother. Then my dad got mixed in with the drug cartel and got himself into trouble. Then our house got raided by the cartel. The leader possessed a magical core, and he could sense that Amy wasn't a human, but a magical being. She got taken from me. The man killed her while she screamed at me to run. She helped me escape. Amy was strong. I don't think she was helpless. Amy did everything she could to protect me, but since I was so young and didn't have the potential at the time to use my force sparingly, she could only pull so much. I was 10 then, not sure whatever happened to my sister or her mother, but I hid until sunrise and those men left. My father then found me. His clothes were torn, his eyes puffy and black. He was missing a tooth and blood covered him from head to toe. He was a piece of shit. Then when I was barely 15, I left, never looked back. When Amy was murdered, I lost her bond. I'm unsure of a way to get her back, but I'm trying. My other bonds, which I possessed at the time, do not know. Once a bond is destroyed, links and memories of that bond are broken with the others, severed ties. However, my memories of her and the pain I endured from what happened to her remain. So that means something, right? Hot tears streamed down her face. So yeah, there you go. You're the only one, and the only one who knows about that. I've never told anyone about my past, besides saying my parents passed. She uncorked the bottle with a sob and took another swig from the bottle. Sebastian leaned forward to sit his glass down on the floor. He grabbed Gracie into a bridal-style hold awkwardly and then moved her to sit in his lap. Once situated, he managed to loosen the grip on the bottle. Her hands moved to the collar of his shirt, grabbing the material of his shirt into fists as she continued to cry. Sebastian awkwardly petted her head and placed his lips on her hairline. He knew he asked for something no one else knew, but what he wasn't expecting was a bombshell like that. Gracie herself was a ticking time bomb. No wonder she spiraled after Theo. He moved his lips down and kissed her softly on the temple. His lips lingered, her body shook in his lap, releasing years of pain. Something within him sparked, and he wanted to hold on to her a little bit longer. And that was a long chapter. And that was a lot to take in. A lot happened in that one.
That's where I'm like, oh, Sebastian's so sweet.
Yeah, but now we are getting greeted by some witches. This next chapter is a little shorter. Alright. Chapter 6. Focus on me. Gracie felt as though she had been hit by a train. Her entire body felt heavy, and her head throbbed. Why she chose to drink whiskey with Sebastian last night was beyond her. She sat on the floor in front of the toilet and prayed twice to the porcelain bowl. She was a lightweight and hardly drank to begin with. The aftermath was always the same result, but she also realized bottle chugging probably wasn't her brightest idea. Gracie moved her hand to pinch the bridge of her nose. She had chosen the one skeleton bone in her closet for story time. No one knew about her family life besides the need-to-know facts she had given in order to keep people off her back. No one knew anything about her mother and how she was missing. They just believed that she passed away. Gracie also clearly remembered through the sobs that Sebastian kissed her not once but twice on her temple. It was enough to realize that the relationship had changed last night. Sebastian had told her she had cried her soul out, and this time it wasn't over heartbreak induced by a man. A cool rag on her neck startled Gracie, the sudden movement making the entire world spin like a spin top. She tried to hold her breath, mentally counting to 10 before slowly releasing it. I tried to warn you, Sebastian said quietly. He had practically held her in his lap all night, then quietly complained that his ass was numb and moved him to the bed, where she had stayed clutched to his shirt. She had woken him up by gagging and tripping over the blanket as she tried to rush to the bathroom. "Why'd you let me?" she asked, barely audible. Her voice sounded rough, but she was surprised that a noise even came out. "Because you needed it. You needed to drown your sorrows. I've been there. I still suffer." Gracie gave Sebastian a squinty glance. "Yeah, maybe I did, but I'm not so sure this aftermath is worth." She lunged for the toilet, dry heaving. "Your mistake was drinking way too fast from the bottle. To avoid a hangover, you need to pace yourself. Lesson learned." Sebastian crouched beside her and awkwardly rubbed her back up and down as she groaned. An hour had passed, and the urge to puke her guts out had finally subsided, leaving her exhausted. She leaned against the tub with her knee propped up and rested an elbow as she leaned into the palm of her hand. Sebastian had given her some painkillers 30 minutes prior and kept urging her to lie in bed, but she had no energy to move. So instead, Sebastian sat with her on the bathroom floor. I'm sorry, Gracie apologized. She couldn't see Sebastian's face since the lights were off. The only light source came from the ajar bathroom door. Why? Gracie shifted herself to a sitting position. For last night. I shouldn't have burdened you with that one. She didn't want pity. She knew everyone at Misfits had a story about why they ended up there. Some still had parents and some didn't. Some had siblings, but most didn't. Why do you think that is a burden? Because no one else but me needs to worry about something like that. Everyone has battles to focus on. I don't need someone focusing on me and my problems, battles, whatever. You asked and you received. You do not need to feel obligated to change something that can't be undone. You gave me the opening to finally let go of all the pent-up anger from all the years I have held in. So I took advantage, and you got the storm. Her eyes glistened as tears threatened to fall. I can't really argue with you, Sebastian finally said. Gracie sighed, feeling horrible both physically and as a person. I don't blame you, but I do appreciate you bearing my sob story. I'm the definition of a hot mess. She raked her fingers through her hair. A beautiful mess, Sebastian said. She tilted her head as long, loose curls tumbled off her shoulder. Did I just hear you say I'm beautiful? She asked. She heard him shift against the tub. Thank you. I'm flattered. She didn't want Sebastian to rush away. I need to contact Remy. It was an excuse. Gracie nodded sadly. Right. Okay. Sebastian pushed himself up from the floor and glanced at her. You're welcome. He turned and walked away. Gracie looked up startled, but Sebastian was already in the main room. She wasn't quite sure how to process everything that happened. She sighed and rubbed her face as she picked herself up and closed the door to the bathroom. After her shower, Gracie felt much better. She sat in one of the sofa chairs with a ceramic mug of coffee while Sebastian leaned against the wall in between the balcony door and fireplace. Leon sat on the arm of the chair Gracie occupied, holding Sebastian's device in his hand. You ready over there? Remy's voice asked over the speaker. Let me tell you how impossible this almost was without getting caught. Monroe can be like an annoying flea, Remy joked. Remy, Sebastian's voice snapped. Tell us what you found. Remy chuckled on the other end. Don't get your panties in a knot, so as you instructed, I won't say them by their true name due to the taboo. They rely heavily on voodoo and chants, as the power weighs heavily on their mind. It is taboo used to cause chaos. Most possess an object which is their source of power, like a ring or necklace or barrette, something like that. To stop them, the object must be destroyed. Leon cleared his throat, causing Gracie to look up at him. What happens if the object is destroyed? Leon disregarded the look Gracie gave him. Well, it doesn't exactly state, but as one can imagine, I suppose they die, or when their core is destroyed, they can turn into an ordinary human with no core. Remy, can they mess with someone's mind by chance? What is the extent of their power? Gracie asked. He hummed into the speaker. Well, just like us mages, their breed can vary. Some can spellcast using their object, and some can spell voodoo dolls. Others would have to make a pentagram and use their blood to summon souls to do their bidding. There's a lot more information that goes into more depth. Thought I would just relay the gist of it. Gracie looked up at Sebastian, who tapped his finger against his forearm and thought. When she turned... Hold on. The downfall of being outside.
What was that?
I had a spider.
No, you had a spider.
I had a spider on me. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Gracie looked up at Sebastian, who tapped a finger against his forearm and thought. She turned back to Leon to stare at his arm. The healing process was moving at the same pace as an average human would, which frightened her, considering Leon had spent some time on his planet afterward. I have a question, and I hope you have an answer from your research, Gracie said. Well, I hope I have the answer for you then. Shoot away. For example, I'm a bonder. My mind links many paths connecting me to my bonds. Say, if I ran into one who could spellcast by words of the mouth or lip syncing, can that possibly transfer to a bond or several? I win. Thank you. Leon's fingers tightened around the device. An eerie silence plagued the room as they waited anxiously for Remy's response. Yes, he finally answered. However, I don't think it could affect more than one due to the core expansion. So I would say it would be a bond, which you're the most bonded with. My magic isn't far from their breed, yet quite different simultaneously. They heard a book close shut. Thanks, Remy, Gracie said as her fingers flexed against her mug and stared at the liquid intently. You guys are good, right? Remy asked worrisome. Sebastian moved off the wall and grabbed his device from a frightened Leon. Thanks, Remy. I'll contact later. Sebastian disconnected the line before Remy could respond. He sighed. That wasn't what any of them wanted to hear, but it confirmed their suspicions. All it meant was that they needed a good game plan and a backup if the first were to fail. My lady, this only makes training your spellcasting that much more dire. Leon's tone was laced with anxiousness. I'd be a liar denying that I'm not scared. The idea of them being so near makes me fear for you and myself, the other bonds. Okay, Gracie's voice was quiet. Just give me a minute. They agreed not to leave the room today and made Brody and Kinsley aware they were on undercover duty alone. After finding her composure and calming her raging nerves, Gracie was ready. She tied her hair into a messy bun on top of her head and sat on the floor, legs crossed. Her eyes were glued to Holly, who appeared in a gray skirt and a white collared button-down shirt. She had horns adorning the top of her head with 4 sections of her hair and braids tied as one in the back. Lady Gracie, I need you to please shut off your mind, clear away all your problems, and think of absolutely nothing, Holly ordered, clasping her hands behind her back. Gracie closed her eyes, trying to do as she was told. Once you do that, please open your eyes so we can move on. However, do not speak a word. Your eyes will tell me. Gracie took a deep breath, breathing through her nose and then out of her mouth. She worked on clearing everything from her mind, even things buried deep within her. She needed her consciousness to be clear and accessible. Once she felt completely clear, she opened her eyes to move on. Next, I need you to focus only on the core that enables your divine power, Gracie ordered. Gracie tried to, but her mind kept veering to the part of her magical core that supported her bonds. Stop! Your mind isn't clear. You're getting frustrated. Clear your mind once more and try again. Gracie closed her eyes and started over. After an excruciating hour, sweat beaded on her forehead. Leon paced anxiously after Gracie connected herself to the correct part of her core. The feeling was so familiar yet felt so foreign to her that she almost lost her connection. The tug was more noticeable than that of her bonds. Now, focus energy between your hands. This is called magic manipulation, Holly said as she paced slowly before Gracie. Gracie subconsciously reached out and focused her energy on the space between her hands. I want you to form that energy into a sphere, Holly commanded and turned on her heel. Gracie focused on the energy, trying to shape the power into a sphere as Holly had instructed. Sebastian walked out onto the balcony to get some air before he suffocated. He needed to make sure Gracie was at some advantage so that she could hold down her own for when they executed their plan. He felt the shift in her magic as she meditated. It was raw and rogue. He watched as she struggled to tame it. Sebastian wondered how many people even knew she possessed a magical split core, even the fact that there was such a thing. Her bond magic was a rarity, but it only made him worry about maintaining bonding in divine split core. Gracie's magic was an advantage, yet also a danger. Many would have loved to possess that kind of magic, and now, knowing that what lurked in the dark, anything was possible. He rubbed his chin, feeling the stubble prick his fingers. He needed to stop thinking like that. What he needed in order to be happy was for Gracie to grasp her magic and grow with it. He worried too much about the maybes. He understood why she didn't acknowledge that part of her magic, but at the same time, he thought she should have embraced it. There were ways to shape it. He started to realize that there was more than met the eye when it came to her. Maybe Gracie's facade was a front, an expectation she tried to live by rather than dwelling on the past. Maybe something had happened before her mother's disappearance. Be careful. Smoke is coming out of your ears, Leon joked. He rolled the sleeves of his button up to his elbows, revealing the burn marks that were beginning to heal. He leaned against the doorframe when Sebastian looked over his shoulder at him. Why didn't she mention her other magic ability until last night? Why doesn't she use it? Sebastian asked and turned to lean against the railing. I'm not obligated to answer those questions. Anything my lady chooses to withhold, stay with me. We have a confidentiality contract. I'm sorry, but I will not breach my position of being Gracie's bond by telling you something that she's clearly not comfortable enough to discuss with you. I get it. Sebastian sighed, realizing that he may need to leave and get away for a while. He wouldn't have minded working out or even training for a bit. His magic was starting to overwhelm him with all the stress he was putting himself under. Can you watch her for a bit so I could take a walk? Sebastian asked Leon with a plea in his tone. Leon nodded. Yes. That was all Sebastian needed to hear. He walked past Leon, Gracie, and the other bond and slipped out the door undetected. And that is the end of chapter 6.
Ooh.
What's going on?
Mm-hmm. I see all your little... Are those all sticky notes, or are those also, like, pieces of paper that you got on some pages?
No, they're sticky notes.
Nice.
Just note and page that I want to work on for the second edition.
Yeah. Alright, are you ready for me to go?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. Alright. I'm also starting chapter 5 before I get started, so I'm reading Falling Forward, and so far what's happened is that Chase and Summer met each other on a plane. They're both from the same state, but they're also both going to the same state, so they both are going to New York. And so Chase, we got to meet his little group of friends, and they're in a band, and he went to Summer's art gallery that she invited him to. And then she, in turn, went to one of his concerts and got to kind of meet the band members a little bit. She got really drunk, and she woke up the next morning to find that Chase not only gave her medicine, but he also stayed the night because her friend Kim let him stay the night as well. So we're starting off on Chase's perspective of, I believe it's the same day. Alright, chapter 5. Did I do something wrong? I asked Kim as she shut the front door behind us. The mid-August air was warm, feeling almost thick. Nah, she's just cranky in the morning. Don't mind her. Kim waved her hand around as she spoke. That didn't make me feel any better. I didn't mean to startle her. I guess I should have just gone home last night. Chase, you were almost as drunk as Summer. I also highly doubt that your friends were sober enough to make sure you got to your place safely either. They should have honestly stayed as well. They don't like to intrude on people like that. I'm sure they would have appreciated the offer, though. Thank you again. I turned around to walk down the pathway to the main street, hidden within the neighborhood. Kim quickly grabbed my shoulder as I took my first step. One more thing, she said. Has Summer told you much about why she's here? Like, why she moved to New York? Not much, just that she needed to get away from home. Oh. Kim looked almost disappointed at my answer. Is there something I should know? I shouldn't tell you, but... She quickly looked behind her, ensuring no prying eyes or listening ears existed. Kim slowly leaned in to whisper. Summer is looking for her mother. I didn't have a way to respond to that. Summer hadn't mentioned she was looking for anyone during our time together so far. Now, my curiosity about her grew even more. Why is she looking for her? I whispered back. Summer grew up in foster homes. She was left at a hospital here in New York when she was born. She wanted to know why she was abandoned her whole life, and now that she's old enough, she's developed this whole goal of just trying to find her mother to ask why. Too stunned to speak, I just stared at Kim's brown eyes. My mind was computing everything she had just said in that short amount of time, but it took longer than I had anticipated to comprehend the story. I never would have guessed that Summer was a foster child, but I suppose you couldn't tell just by looking at someone. I decided I would be keeping this to myself. Summer's secret was now in my treasure trove. I'll keep my mouth shut about this. Thanks for letting me know, I finally said. Just keep an eye on her, please. She could be sporadic and almost bipolar, but she has a gentle heart. I don't want to see it broken. Not again. Kim mumbled the last part to herself, but I heard it clearly. I didn't push her further and instead turned to head to my destination. As I rode the public transit to my apartment, my brain worked around the new information it was given. I tried to remember any clue that Summer may have given me about being here or her intentions, but nothing satisfied my urge to know more. Just these thoughts were enough to raise my anxiety level to a point of consistently tapping on the armrest or legs. I closed my eyes to take some deep breaths and take some deep and slow breaths. Finally, I made it outside my humble apartment building. Coated in a dark brown, the brick structure showed its age. The neighborhood itself wasn't safe enough for any individual, but the price was worth it. Once I entered my abode, I kicked off my boots and plopped down on the spring-made bed. It was not as soft as the couch I'd slept on last night, but I felt I could finally relax. Once my body finally loosened up from all my tension, I began to remember all the events that happened last night. Summer tried to match my speed, but was only able to get to about the 4th shot before she couldn't walk anymore. I was able to put down a 6th shot, but after that, I was almost in the same boat. Memories of music from other bands, as well as the flavor of the greasy food, filled my senses. Soon, the thoughts drifted to being in a car. I asked Summer to call her friend for the address since she couldn't remember it then. Summer barely unlocked her phone before giving it to me to call her friend. From there, we found the large home deep in a high-class neighborhood. Our rowdiness must have woken up a neighbor or two, but we didn't care at the time. Summer needed help getting out of the car, so I was designated to do so since she was my friend. From there, I had to practically carry her with her arm over my shoulders and my hand on her waist to keep her balance on her feet. Kim was in her pajamas, a silk matching set, and laughed at her friend's state. At some point, I ended up lying on their couch before everything went black. When I had awoken, Kim was already working on breakfast. I rolled over on my bed to lay on my back after the events of last night rolled through my mind. With a deep sigh, I slowly sat myself up. Next time, I'll make sure Summer doesn't drink as much, I said to myself. Startling me, my phone's notification tone went louder than anticipated. It fumbled in my hands for a moment before I could see it was a message from Summer herself. Thank you for making sure I got home last night. It was fun, but I wish I could remember most of it. I laughed out loud at the ending of her message. I wasn't sure what to say back, but I had just set my phone beside me. Immediately, I felt the urge to take a shower, so I took the liberty of this time to do so, as well as shaving my face to cross it off my list officially. Chapters break. Did you guys do anything? Dominic asked, sipping his coffee. It's been a few days since our last show, along with getting home from Summer's place. No, I practically fell asleep the moment I got inside, I answered. The guys and I met up at our usual hangout spot and drank our addiction to caffeine away. They pestered me for information about my night at Summer's place, but there wasn't much to tell. Man, you're so boring sometimes, Richie groaned. He was on time today, probably wanting to hear the gossip I didn't have. Well, I apologize. I don't take advantage of a drunk girl. Whoa, I didn't mean anything like that. I just meant, you guys really didn't do anything? Stop bugging him, Rich. He already gave you his answer. Ryder finally stepped in on the conversation, tired of hearing the whining. Ryder, have you heard anything about any new gigs? Dominic stepped in, changing the subject. I could feel my nerves loosen once he brought up the topic. Nothing yet, but I did hear that there was a scout last night. I guess they were there all night looking for a new band to sign a contract with. And? Richie questioned. Well, as far as I know, they select a couple of bands or singers they like, go to a few more shows, and lock in their pick by the end. I don't know if that was the first try with them, but it would be awesome if we hear about them being at the next one we get. Can you guys imagine getting a label? Dominic chuckled and shook his head after asking that, as if it was impossible. Almost as if there were ears all around, Ryder's cell went off, signifying a call coming in. He snatched up his device and shot up from his seat as he answered. Ryder was the type of person who started meandering around whenever he was on the phone, so we had a difficult time eavesdropping on his conversation. Within a few minutes, he turned to look at us with a toothy grin. We got another gig, but someone is watching us this time. Our mouths dropped, unsure of what to say. It was a sense of déjà vu from what we were just conversing about. Where at? Richie broke the ice. Just at the biggest place in town for newbies like us. It wasn't long before we took our party. Oh my god. Oh my gosh. It wasn't.
Well,
That's crazy. It wasn't long before we took our party from the coffee shop to a bar just down the block to celebrate. Man, from coffee to drinking, what was I thinking on that one? On the way to the establishment, I called Summer to tell her the news. Hey, Chase, what's up? She sounded exacerbated while answering. You alright? I asked. Oh, yeah, totally. I was just, I couldn't tell she was trying to think of an excuse. Going for a jog? You said you didn't like exercising. Well, sometimes you have to try new things. But anyways, you called me, so what's the news? I didn't buy her bluff for a moment, but decided to put it off for now as I told her the news of us getting a gig while also having the potential for getting selected for a label. No way! Do those things really happen? Like, in real life? I always thought that was just in movies. Sometimes, but that's how most artists get noticed. Scouts are always looking to add to their collection, as I like to call it. The guys and I are celebrating at the bar near Central. You could join us if you'd like. I'd better not. Just the thought of alcohol right now makes my stomach boil. We both laughed. But I'll definitely be at the show. Great, I can send you the address. I'll see you at work tomorrow then. With that, our conversation ended. Even though I was excited to have a chance with a label company finally, I was also stoked to see Summer at work. We've been working together for almost a week now, and she had learned a lot already from it, being her first job. Summer was a people pleaser, but there were times when she caught me off guard with how she handled a challenging customer. Whenever we finished a rush, we had time to clean up and goof off when the boss wasn't watching. It's during those times that I got to see Summer's true personality. Unfortunately, I also become fidgety and tend to get nervous around her when I think about how close we were becoming. There was something about her that drew me in. She came out as sweet, charismatic, and empathetic, almost everything I could ask for. However, she also still held secrets and wouldn't talk much about her past, and I respect her for that, and it also kept me intrigued. We all have our secrets that we want to keep to ourselves, especially with our dark pasts. Scene break. Tonight was a big night. We practiced the songs we planned on playing for 4 days straight to ensure we knew every note by heart. I made sure to practice my lyrics in the shower or stare back at myself through the mirror in case I had any revisions I needed to make. Overall, we were fully prepared. The guys and I would typically order some form of transportation to get to our gigs, but Kim offered to drive us this time. She had a large utility van that she said was used when transporting pieces or sculptures for artists if they didn't have any other way. It was large enough to fit all of us with our instruments in the back. Ryder sat in the passenger seat speaking with Kim the whole way. It almost looked like they were building some chemistry with how much they said, completely ignoring us. Summer sat in between Dominic and I while Richie sat in the far back, making sure his guitar was tuned precisely how he wanted it. We all dressed in dark attire, fit for the occasion, and Summer had her hair up in a messy bun. Damn, she was cute. Summer, since you and Kim will be walking in with us, you guys can have a special spot near the front of the stage, Dominic mentioned. I'm very excited for you guys. Do you know which company the Scout is from? Summer asked. No idea, but if I could take a guess, it's gotta be a low-key company looking to build their fame through someone else. Is that bad? Not really, but it's also not ideal. It would be a slow growth, and if they aren't great at getting info to the public, then we won't get noticed very much, I answered. But a deal is a deal. If we don't like them, then we leave once the contract is finished. I think you guys will do great. Kim pepped from the driver's seat as she began to park the van in an open spot on the street. She was talented at parallel parking, especially an utility vehicle with many blind spots. We gathered our items and made our way around the back of the venue. The front was crowded with people trying to get past the guards. Another band was in front of us, getting their identification cards checked. When it was our turn, we were given special badges to say which band we were. Kim and Summer got special guest passes once we stated they were with us. As soon as we got checked in, another worker escorted us to our dressing room, large enough for a choir. We had about 2 hours, so the guys and I began to refine our instruments and plan our songs. Each band was given enough time to perform about 3 songs. For tonight, 10 bands were performing, but we were right in the middle of the list. Summer and I are going to order some drinks and snacks, Kim said, leaving the room with Summer following behind. Once the door closed behind them, the guys started with their pestering again. So, when are you going to ask? Dominic spoke in riddles sometimes. What are you talking about? I asked, realizing his attention was on me. Summer, when are you going to ask her out already? Can we not talk about this right now? We are kind of focusing on practicing. Oh, come on, we can take a little break. Dom, lay off, man, Richie said, placing a hand on Dominic's shoulder. We know that Chase is a lost cause when it comes to dating now. What's that supposed to mean? I growled. Well, I'm just saying, since your last girl, finish that sentence and you are done. I didn't want those memories brought up at a time like this. The air became quiet and tense until the girls walked back in. I could tell they sensed the change. Oh, are we interrupting something? Summer asked quietly. I slumped into my chair, grabbing my lyrics paper as I shook my head. It was more so I could try to clear my mind, but I also used it as an answer. The bartender said that snacks and drinks will be brought in soon, Kim said, sitting in an open seat as Summer remained standing. I could feel her eyes carefully watching me, making me tilt my head to meet them finally. It's fine, Summer, really. I loudly sighed, releasing the pressure from my shoulders. If there's anything else I could do... Summer walked a little closer but still seemed to fidget. It reminded me of a child that was about to be scolded. My mind created scenarios where she may have learned this behavior while growing up. How many foster families did she have? Which one was the most hurtful? Shaking my head to clear away the questions, I slowly stood up, placing the sheets of paper down on the short table we were given. Cheer as loud as you can when we get on stage. Her smile beamed brighter than the sun. That was also what I wanted. I could go on the stage with a clear conscience, knowing that my behavior didn't upset her. We have about an hour before we are up. Let's get our final kinks out before then, Ryder offered. Maybe Kim and I should go find our spots near the stage. We can listen to the other bands while we wait, Summer said. Kim nodded in affirmation, and they both left the room. Alright, chapter 6. Man, that word threw me off so fast. I can't believe I said potty.
I mean, I trip up a lot, so.
Okay, chapter 6 is from Summer's perspective. Kim and I walked side by side as we left towards the crowded area. I could feel my nerves shoot up just thinking about being thrashed around by the cheering fans again like last time. I hope everything was actually alright, I said before the volume got too loud. They'll do great. Don't be such a worrywart, Kim reassured me. You're such a mom. We both giggled at my response. We got to a set of double doors that had the same guard we just passed earlier when we ordered food for the guys. He led us out to the guest area near the stage, and we found a spot near the front. The venue was much larger, with vaulted ceilings and more square footage for more customers. Even with that, it was still crowded, stuffy, and aggressively hot. There was already a band playing on stage, but the song they were currently playing wasn't as loud as we would have expected right off the bat. It was almost nice to walk out to a calm noise before it would get louder later. As we stood, I began to examine my surroundings again, scanning the room, eyeing all the exits, where the nearest bathrooms were, as well as calculating how far the bar was from where we stood. Kim noticed this and tried to divert my attention. See if you can find someone that doesn't look like they fit in here. They could be the scout. She was right. A scout most likely wouldn't be dressed up like the average person here. They might be in more formal attire. I couldn't see too far back behind us with my short stature, but as I continued to do a 360 around the room, my eyes caught a man standing near the bar closer to the stage. He wore a button-up black shirt tucked in business slacks. His sleeves were rolled up, most likely from the humid temperature of the room. His hair was gently shaved on both sides with both sides of his head, with the remainder of the hair was gelled back. I think I found them. I raised my voice to compete with the band as they got louder from their next song. I gently tugged on Kim's shirt as I nonchalantly pointed towards the man's direction. I think you did. Should I tell the guys? No, They might just freak out if they find out where he is. Let's tell them after the show, and we can enlighten them on all his expressions. Kim was always the strategic type ever since high school. That was when I learned what kind of person she was. When we first met, I had just transferred to the school in the middle of the year. She sat in the far back with what was known as the popular kids. Her clothes were expensive, but her personality lacked that of someone selfish. She was more of the alpha of the group. I was a freshman, and she was a senior then. We never interacted until our science teacher paired us up together for a month-long science experiment. At first, she didn't want to do most of the work, but when she found out I wasn't the best with calculations, she took over. During that month, we spent a lot of time learning about one another and slowly grew to be friends. I was clumsy, fragile, and was falling behind in my classes. She helped me to keep up with my studies by scheduling weekly study sessions to help me pass my classes. Oh, I did a typo. Look at that. Even after she graduated...
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Yeah, I'm gonna bookmark that one. Boop. Even after she graduated and slowly began to take over her family's business, Kim continued to help me study, and we began to hang out more outside of school. That was when I felt more comfortable opening up to her about my past and who I was. She was the only person to truly know me and what I had gone through and accepted me for it. My feet began to hurt in the flats that I had just gotten the other day after standing and listening to the other bands play. It was finally time for Chase and his friends to make their way to the stage, and as much as I wanted to watch the Scout, I also wanted to keep my eyes on them. I did as Chase requested and cheered as loudly as I could. We made eye contact several times, but I could tell he was trying to keep calm while singing. I noticed how he would smile each time he saw me, which would cause my face to warm up more than I could imagine. The songs they played were different from the last show I attended. That was when I realized that I didn't know how many songs they had. It was amazing to hear new notes and vocals. I hadn't realized it at the time, but the rest of the band glowed just as much as Chase. Ryder and Richie both stood on either side, adjacent to their lead singer, each with their instrument. Even though they both played completely differently, their music made a coherent harmony that matched the tone of Chase's voice. Dominic continued to lead with the rhythm of his tapping on the drums, bopping his head up and down to move with the beat. They were all perfectly in sync with each other. This rush was different from the last show I attended. It was more invigorating, and I was growing addicted to it. Time had gone by too quickly, carrying their songs with it. Once they had finished their last song, the band was visibly panting heavily as they took in the sight of the cheering crowd. Chase and I locked eyes again, but this time we shared smiles. Chapter break. That crowd was way fiercer than the last place, Richie exclaimed. Kim and I followed the band back to the dressing room as they stepped off the stage. Once the double doors swung closed behind us, I shared the news. I think I saw the Scout too. Really? Where? Ryder asked. He was standing by the bar closer to the stage. He stood out from the rest of the people, so it's just an educated guess. That's gotta be him then. So what happens next? Kim wondered. We finally entered the quiet room and sat in the plush leather seats. As far as I know, he might either wait for another show, straight up say no, or come by and say yes, Dominic answered. Those seemed to be the logical steps, but I wondered if there could have been more to it than that. There was a delivery of refrigerated water bottles from the staff of the venue. The band members chugged almost 2 bottles each, letting out loud gasps between each gulp. I tried not to stare too much, but the lights in the room showed how much sweat they were covered in. The room began to hold their musk as well, but I somehow didn't mind. Perhaps it was knowing that I had watched them work so hard up to this point that the smell didn't disturb me like it normally would. There was another light tap on the door leading out of the room. Kim stood up to answer it, only to quickly turn to face the group. It's the Scout, she mouthed, trying to hide her excitement. The band members tried to stand up, but the gentleman I had spotted earlier raised his hand, signifying that they could stay where they were. You guys did pretty good, he said. His voice came out more gruff, deeper than his figure deserved. I'm sure you knew I was coming. Name's Pete. I'm from Running Records. It's nice to meet you, Chase started, but the guy had put his hand up again. I don't have a lot of time for pleasantries, so just listen carefully. My boss has been looking for talent like yours. Something old school, but modern at the same time. I think your band fits that profile. You guys are going to meet the boss in 1 month at this address. Arrive 30 minutes early and bring just yourselves. Your instruments aren't required during the first meeting. Any questions? Pete showed aggression with each word he spoke, as if he had a horrible day and was just trying to go home. With closer inspection, you could see the crow's feet and silver hair on his face, showing some of his age. I felt my nerves kicking up as he spoke to them, but his eyes never looked at me or Kim. We were just ghosts, invisible beings to his standards. Chase took the card that he offered when stating that they could find the address on it. I couldn't see it very well, so I just continued to watch their expressions. All they gave were quick nods up to the end of Pete's speech. Good. Don't keep him waiting. Pete shut the door behind him as he left. The air in the room slowly loosened up after a minute or so. What an ass, Richie finally spoke, breaking the silence. Agreed, but... Chase paused and stood, facing all of us. We got it! He held the card up in the air as we all laughed and cheered. I'm so happy for you guys, I smiled. I knew you could do it, added Kim. Guys, I think we deserve a treat. What do you say? Chase asked. This was his suggestion for another drinking night. It almost seemed like that was their only way of celebrating, but tonight I didn't mind. Kim stated that she would join in as well, which made us all shocked. She was never much of a drinker, especially at bars. She liked her expensive wine over the weekends, and that was it. Do we want to stay here or go somewhere else? Dominic suggested. Maybe we could hit up the spot closer to Chase's place, in case we all need a crash, Ryder mentioned. Stay the night at Chase's. That was a thought that came to mind occasionally without my having any intention for it to, but I never would have thought it would have been so soon. My face reddened at the sudden thought. That sounds like a good idea. Is that cool with you girls? Chase asked. Kim gave a quick affirmation without even looking my way. Within minutes, we loaded up the instruments into Kim's van, checked out of the venue, and drove a few miles to the small bar closest to Central Park. It also wasn't too far from work, which made me wonder how close Chase lived in the area. We spent the next 3 hours, up until the bars closed, drinking and eating. I think I consumed the same amount as last time, but I didn't black out as quickly. We all sat in the back of the establishment, and the servers were attentive. The bar itself was much more quaint than I would have expected for it being a regular spot for the band. Just as predicted, Kim barely drank anything. She had, at most, 2 mojitos and slowly sipped them the whole time, but she enjoyed every minute with us. She continued to grow closer to Ryder, too, which made me curious about what she thought of him or what her intentions were. Further in the night, I felt my eyes getting heavy, exhaustion and tiredness taking over. I couldn't remember much, but Chase seemed to have noticed right away. You can go home if you want. You are looking pretty tired. Nah, fine. I'm fine. Slur was starting to sprout with each word. At some point, I had been loaded into Kim's van with her driving us to home. All I could recall from between those points was a sudden change in attitude when a certain woman walked in and began to talk to Chase. Bum, bum, bum.
I was coming to that part. Yeah.
Cliffhanger.
Did I mention this is one of my favorite YA books?
Oh, thank you. I can't believe I never saw that typo. That's crazy.
Because you're reading it out loud instead of just like you pick up that's why I got so many sticky tabs, because you don't catch things until you hear it being read out loud. You're reading it out loud, reading it in different forms, like on paper, in a book, on the PDF file, whatever.
Yeah, so next time when we go to read our book, we will be reading chapters 7 and 8. Let me see. I believe my book has 26 chapters. Okay, so I'm not at the halfway point yet, but I'm 3 chapters away from part 2, so that'll be interesting.
And I have 31 chapters, but what I will probably do is read 29, 30, and 31. And since my book will end a little after yours.
Okay. Yeah, and then from there, we will talk about what our next plans will be for Read Aloud. So.
Yep.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Next week will be open mic session. We'll probably be talking about our works in progress. If anybody who's on Discord wants to come and join us and just kind of chat, we'll probably just chat. It could be about whatever, even if it's their works in progress. For anybody who wants to be interviewed to be a author spotlight, Essay has a wonderful sign-up sheet. Just contact me or her, and we can refer you to that sign-up sheet, and we can try to squeeze you in the next few months to do a author spotlight interview.
Yep.
All right.
And right now we're looking at dates in January because November and December are full.
Yes. So keep that in mind. If we get a lot of people who sign up, we could try to squeeze into a month, but otherwise we're sticking with one a month. But other than that, don't forget to comment, leave a like, subscribe. We post on Spotify, we post on YouTube. Follow us on TikTok at Author Sesh Corner. We aren't doing collaborative lives there yet. We need to get 100 followers. Right now we are below 20, so please leave a follow there as well. All right. Bye-bye.
Sorry, I had camera issues. Bye.
You're okay.